We welcome the actions taken by President Trump. And most importantly, as a result of the first stage of his initiative, hostages were freed and bodies were returned so that, in accordance with religious traditions, they could be laid to rest. But now we are all waiting for the start of the second stage. And the fact that the plan, despite all its humanitarian focus, does not provide for a final reliable solution to the Palestinian issue in accordance with UN resolutions. And this, of course, does not inspire optimism. There are clearly a lot of speculations, various kinds of destructive provocations and fakes. That is why we see the main purpose of such actions initiated by our Western colleagues as follows. Namely, to complicate the search for a negotiated solution and to prolong the conflict, including by working against the initiatives of the United States and President Trump, which are genuinely aimed at finding solutions that will help eliminate the root causes of the Ukrainian crisis. No one in Europe even mentions the root causes at all, and they demand only one thing: immediately cease hostilities, give Ukraine and us Europeans a chance to catch our breath, to buy time in order to provide at least some support with weapons and money. The Kyiv regime is discussed over the phone between President Trump, Macron, Starmer, and Friedrich Merz. And so, the official representative of the German government, a certain Mr. Cornelius, makes a public statement which says the four heads of state and government discuss the progress of negotiations on a ceasefire in Ukraine. That's all they talked about. Europe is not interested in anything else. But we insist that there must be a package of agreements for a solid, stable, long-term peace with security guarantees for all parties involved. And our negotiations with the President of the United States and his team are dedicated precisely to this, to finding a long-term settlement to eliminate the root causes of this crisis. But as for Western Europe, as can be seen from the statement by the official representative of the German government that I quoted, they are only thinking about stopping the fighting, catching their breath, and then preparing again. Preparing Zelensky and his regime for war against the Russian Federation. Credit must be given to the current American leader. After returning to the White House, he really did take up this issue. In our view, he is sincerely striving to help resolve the conflict through political and diplomatic means. We welcome this, but of course, good intentions alone are not enough. Practical steps are needed to eliminate the very root causes of the conflict. Russia has done everything possible to resolve it. Here is the February 2014 I mentioned, when a coup d'etat took place in Kyiv. We appealed to the leadership of France, Germany, and Poland, urging them to influence the opposition in the West. The resources for waging a proxy war, financial, logistical, and military, are being depleted. The human losses of the armed forces of Ukraine, according to independent estimates, the number has long surpassed 1 million people and continues to grow. The Kyiv regime wants an ideologically charged combat unit fueled by Nazi ideology, the Azov battalions, and other neo-Nazi structures, and of course also sustained by certain banned substances. In everyday life, it has turned into an organized criminal group. It is mired in corruption, which is dragging its sponsors down with it, and the ruling circles of the West as well. Under these circumstances, they can conditionally be divided into two camps. The majority advocate for the militarization of the economies of European countries and preparation for a large-scale armed confrontation in Europe. Obviously in the hope that, as they say, war will write everything off and their mistakes will be forgotten. Zelensky, with the support of various leaders in Brussels, Berlin, London, and Paris, is trying in every possible way to sabotage these efforts and come up with excuses that are aimed solely at derailing the Trump administration from the path that was chosen with a focus on sustainable and long-term resolution. They want to replace all of this with some made-up schemes just to avoid taking any real action. A corruption scandal has erupted in Ukraine. And in light of this, prolonging the conflict now seems to have become a matter of political and perhaps even physical survival for Zelensky. For us, as President Putin has repeatedly emphasized, including recently, a negotiated settlement remains preferable. We have not refused to negotiate. As for the Americans, as I have already said, in our view, they are interested in getting to the heart of the Ukrainian crisis. And this was reflected during the meeting between Presidents Putin and Trump in Anchorage on August 15th. There, mutual understandings were reached, which remain relevant for us and can serve as a starting point for regulation. Recently, when President Trump's special representative, Stephen Witkoff, was here with us, following his meeting with President Putin, both sides, Russian and American, confirmed the mutual understandings reached in Alaska. This is a very, very important result because there was a certain pause after Anchorage. Now here, in our negotiations with the Americans on the Ukrainian issue, I personally believe that misunderstandings and miscommunications have been resolved. Before Alaska, Stephen Witkoff was also in Moscow and also brought proposals that formed the basis of the understandings reached in Anchorage. The essence of these understandings is that Ukraine should return to non-aligned, neutral, and non-nuclear foundations of its statehood. If we are to worry about the integrity of the Constitution, probably, but when it comes to people's rights, the rights of citizens, that is much more important than anything else. And I want to say once again, we also have a constitution. And according to this constitution, Crimea, the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics, as well as the Kherson and Zaporizhia regions, are inalienable in equal parts, subjects of the Russian Federation. At this very same moment in time, we see how the entire Europe is actively bustling about, how President Zelensky is rapidly moving between Paris, London, and other major capitals. And what is leaking to the press, I partially referred to this, clearly indicates that the goal is to undermine the efforts of President Trump and his team. For most of these figures like Macron, Starmer, Merz, Tusk, Stubb, von der Leyen, Kallas, a quick end to the conflict is not beneficial. Simply, they stubbornly beat the drums of war, as they say, form coalitions of the willing, increase military spending, and try to save their political future. The Europeans, of course, are hatching plans to build up their forces and resources right on the borders of the Union State of Russia and Belarus. In Poland, only in Poland, they have announced plans to increase the production of 155mm munitions 30-fold. And against this backdrop, they try to convince everyone that they are not preparing for war, but for some kind of just peace. In Ukraine, they claim to have some role in the settlement process. All these Europeans who proudly, like Macron, declare that without us, without Europe, nothing will be decided. We are not harboring, as the President has made very clear, any aggressive plans against either NATO members or EU members. We are ready to formally record the relevant guarantees in a written legal document, naturally on a collective and reciprocal basis in the context of the approach outlined above.